and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is the first time that you are joining me. One of the things that I really like to do on my channel is share some random rambles about subjects that are generally witchy and tarot related, that happen to be on my mind, or they happen to be something that I'm currently engaged in or thinking about. And there's two reasons why I do that. First of all, I like that space to articulate my thought process out loud so that I can really hear where I am and what I think, and it helps me kind of bed in my thoughts, if you like, and make sense of them. And secondly, I really like to open that conversation with other people so that I can get some kind of feedback on whatever topic it is that I happen to be engaging in at that moment. So because of that, I am, I'm very keen to encourage comments from people, especially people who disagree with me. I'm very open-minded to hearing another person's perception, and I definitely think that that's how we learn and how we grow. The only thing I ever ask in these videos is if that you are going to engage with me or other people in the comment section, please do so respectfully, and please let's remain civil and kind to each other. Now, today's topic hopefully shouldn't be a particularly controversial one, but it is the internet and you never can tell. And what I wanted to talk about today was shadow work, and more specifically what I think shadow work is and why shadow work is a fundamental part of my spiritual practice. So I thought it would be good to share some thoughts about that with you. So at the end of 2016, I started to seriously research the idea of the shadow self and shadow work, and I spent a lot of time on the internet and on YouTube figuring out what it was and what it looked like. And by the end of 2016, the very end of 2016, I knew that it was a practice that I really wanted to engage in. And so in January 2017, I committed to making it a foundational part of my personal practice. Now, I have been practicing following a dedicated shadow work process for the last 2.5 years, but that by no means makes me an expert. And I am not, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a psychoanalyst, I haven't had any formal training. So all I'm doing in this video, and all I can do, is speaking to my own experience and my own thoughts. And that's something that I would like for people to bear in mind. I am going to link to Kellyanne Maddox and Jessi Huntenburg's channels in the description box below. They both share an awful lot of witchy and tarot related content, and they both share content in that sphere around shadow work, which I really think would be beneficial for anybody who has an interest in this topic to check out. I've also shared a link to a channel called the Diamond Network, and that's a channel that shares an awful lot of Jungian psychology type stuff. And I think, again, if shadow work is something that really interests you, then consider checking out that channel and seeing what's about. So anyone who's ever watched any of my previous videos will know how much I love a dictionary definition. And normally this is the point in the video where I crack out that definition of whatever it is that I'm talking about. But I think for shadow work specifically, the concept of shadow work is more complex than can be summed up and simplified by a dictionary definition. So I'm not going to do that here. What I am going to do is just talk through my understanding of what the shadow is and what shadow work is. And again, like I said at the beginning, why I practice it and why it's so fundamental to me as a practice. Now, Carl Jung believed that the shadow was made, or the psyche, was made up of 4 main archetypes. There are others, but they're the 4 main ones: were the persona, the anima or the animus, the self, and the shadow. So the shadow is the part of the unconscious mind, and it tends to be composed of repressed ideas, weaknesses, desires, instincts, and shortcomings. And it often forms out of our attempts to adapt to cultural norms and expectations. So it's that archetype that kind of includes all of the things that is not only considered unacceptable by society, but that we also consider unacceptable based on our own personal morals and values. And the purpose of shadow work is to take those things from the unconscious and bring them into the conscious, with the aim of making peace with them, learning to accept them, and eventually integrating them into part of our self. And the self is basically the unified psyche as a whole. And it's the aim of any individual, at least according to Jung, to eventually work towards becoming a cohesive self. This also has things in common with Maslow's idea of self-actualization. So this is what self-actualization is. If that's, a topic that you're interested in, the comparison there may help. Now, Jung said that the shadow is that hidden, repressed, for the most part inferior and guilt-laden personality whose ultimate ramifications reach back into the realm of our animal ancestors. If it has been believed hitherto that the human shadow was the source of evil, it can now be ascertained on closer investigation of the unconscious man that his shadow does not consist only of morally reprehensible tendencies, but also displays a number of good qualities such as normal instincts, appropriate reactions, realistic insights, creative impulses, etc. So the shadow isn't necessarily made up of bad stuff, but what it is made up of is all of that stuff that we, for one reason or another, believe negatively sets us apart from our perceived understanding of society's norms and expectations. And because we all have this drive to fit in and this drive to belong, we will try and suppress those things that we think make us other. The problem with hiding or repressing these things is that they don't actually go away. And they still have a huge amount of impact over how we behave and over our relationships with other people. But because they're unconscious, meaning we're not really aware of them, we're unable to control them, and so they control us instead. And that, for me, is why shadow work is so fundamentally important. It's because for me, engaging in a shadow work practice is all about empowerment and all about personal empowerment. The more that you can understand and accept your whole self, the more you can the more power that you have over yourself and your life. And one of the biggest learning curves for me, definitely when I started out on this journey, was that you cannot fix these things. These things are not, you're not broken. These things are not things that need fixing. You've already tried to get rid of them. You've already tried to make them go away, and that's why they've become repressed, and that's why they've become hidden. What shadow work is absolutely about is recognizing that these are part of who you are, and about learning to integrate them into your personality and learning to accept the whole of you. So when I think about shadow work, I think of it as taking those things that are in the darkness, that are in the shadow, and bringing them into the light so that you can really look at them for what they are and you can really see them for what they are, and without all the, strange shapes that shadows cast. And you can really learn to accept them and make peace with them. Now, I've learned a lot about myself and about shadow work over the last 2.5 years, but I think the number one thing that I've discovered is necessary, at least for me, in order for a shadow work practice to be effective, is an innate sense of curiosity. I had to get really, really curious about myself. And I need to be asking myself those questions all the time. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I react in that way? Why does that person cause that feeling in me? Why do I not like this person? Why am I embarrassed about this situation? I had to constantly recognize when I was having an automatic reaction to something. And the very next question that I always like to ask myself is, that was very interesting. Where did that come from? Where does it come from? What is that? Where is that reaction stemming from? What underlies that reaction? And I am really curious about myself. I'm really curious about who I am and how I got to be the way that I am. And, I want to understand myself better, because I want to integrate those parts of myself that I hide away, and I want to become a more whole version of myself. The second biggest thing I learned when I started engaging in a shadow work process is that it's not a destination. There is no destination. Shadow work is all about the journey. There are always going to be new things to discover about yourself, and there are always going to be things that you learn, and there are always going to be things that can help you grow towards a better version of yourself. And you're never really done. You're never really done. And the third key thing that I have learned about shadow work is that there's nothing wrong with the way you are now. Everything that you do is just all about moving into a better version of yourself, because you are perfect. You just need to remember that you're perfect, and you just need to keep building up towards that perfect self-actualized version of yourself. So that was a very brief overview of shadow work and why it's important to me. If you do have any questions or any thoughts, as I said, please do leave me a comment below. I would really love to hear from you. And if you enjoy this kind of chatty, specifically witchcraft and tarot related topic, then please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. Until the next time, take care everyone, and lots of love. Bye bye.